about to begin chapter 10, Hamotzet Tefillin, and for our session of today, I'm going to share with you the several practical halachot involved with tefillin. So let's take the basic pair of tefillin. We have the hand tefillin and we have the head tefillin. And as you see, it's always come in pair, which means we have the hand against our heart and we have the hand tefillin on top of our head, and this is a biblical, is a Torah commandment. Now, are we allowed or supposed to put a tefillin on Shabbat?
No.
You remember, we said no, but...
but if you want, you could.
Remember we studied in Tractate Shabbat, page 60,
There's no prohibition.
that there is a machloket. The big question is not to put the tefillin, is the issue of carrying them in the place that it's no eruv. But further on, the discussion is if someone somehow find a tefillin on Shabbat, what can you do with that? Another question is the whole idea of carrying even your own tefillin for some reason on Shabbat. Several other halachot involved with Shabbat and tefillin we're going to discuss today. It reminds me one time I was flying from JFK, so I was sitting in the airport. I was early for that flight because it was a changed plane. So we're sitting in the airport, and a big, tall Afro-American fellow came, and he asked me if I want to buy this. But he has in his hand, without even cover, just the head tefillin. And you know that is a head because they have the sheen, the two different sheen on the head of tefillin. So he saw I'm Jewish, I have kippah. So I said to him, where is the other? Because it looks like brand new tefillin. No, that's what I have, that's what I found. So, for sure to me, the way that he appeared, the way that he approached me, it can be a found tefillin, it has to be stolen. So I said to him, it's no value if you have just one, you have to bring the pair. He said, sir, that's what I have, you want to buy it? So I said to him, how much? So he just said $500. So I said to him, you mean to say you found it and you want 500? No, I bought it. He changed his mind. I said, you bought it for $500. It can't be that you bought just one pair and somebody sold you for $500. So to make long story short, he says, okay, you don't want, goodbye. And I have a fear that he's going to put them in the trash, or who knows what he's going to do with the head tefillin. So we are there at the airport, standing there, back and forth, back and forth. Then I gave him, if I'm not mistaken, like $40 or something like that, just in order to avoid him, you know, who knows, trashing it, or who knows what to do. So, but eventually he was convinced that there's no value with the other part. But back to our subject, we're going to discuss the issue of someone find a tefillin and Shabbat in a public domain, and it's a fear that maybe it's going to be a destroy or going to be some bizui, some type of denigration of the holy mitzvah of tefillin. So therefore, the Mishnah and later the Gemara discuss how to handle this type of situation. Mishnah Hamotzet tefillin machnisan zug zug. So Tosfot tells us here the lomit nerei mechamat kalbi, which means there are dogs. In those days, dogs can go around most probably without any control, and the fear is that the dogs can somehow dump them or In other words, the tefillin is a mitzvah to keep them in a more sacred way, and by leaving them there, it can be a denigration of the mitzvah, or it can be damaged to tefillin. So what did he do? So he take each pair the same way as you're putting during the week, which means he is now, what did he do? He take the tefillin, he put them on himself like you're doing during the week. So you put first the hand tefillin, and then you're putting the hand tefillin, and then he walk inside the house or in the place that it's a safe in the city, and then he comes back to the same location and you do again with the second pair. So it means that he needs to do that back and forth until he's done. As we said earlier, we learn in Tractate Shabbat, page 60, that we are not allowed to walk on Shabbat while we wearing tefillin, but if a person did it, he doesn't need to bring a sin offering, which means that it's not biblical, it's rabbinic. If you remember the discussion there, we talk about Shabbat. It's not the proper time to put tefillin, but there are who hold the opinion that even on Shabbat the person should put tefillin. But the concern is that may a person take off the tefillin and carry them on Shabbat, and therefore we say that you should not do that. In other words, we're not putting tefillin on Shabbat. The idea is that tefillin, in some views, it's called malbush, which means the same way as I'm wearing my suit, my jacket, my other clothing, I'm wearing tefillin. It reminds me, in my previous congregation, we have a guy that walked in the shul in the morning, and we offer him to put tefillin, and he didn't want to. So it was one of the elderly people turned to him and he says, "George, you like sports?" He said, "Yes." He says, "You never miss a Yankee games?" He said, "Yes." So he said to him, "Can you imagine any player walking the field without all the hamlet and all the dress? It can be, right? You can't come to a shul and don't put tefillin. It's not right." I remember that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so the idea is that it's malbush. It's part of the person clothing. So the Vilna Gaon explained, as part of coming on Shulchan Aruch and the code 301, that only according to one opinion that said that it is proper to put tefillin on Shabbat, then it's considering a real clothing, meaning that it's real part of a person's needs, like the same way as you need your shirt, you need your tefillin. So that's the idea. But the key point is, the sage said you should not bother to do that because it's an issue of carrying on Shabbat. But since again it's rabbinic, you don't violate Torah law, so it's not a sin offering for that.
So Rabbi, what about putting it on home, say you pray and then come to the synagogue on Shabbat?
It's a good point. So basically the final halacha, after it's all discussion there, again I address you can watch it on YouTube. So it's a Tractate Shabbat, page 60. The final halacha, it was a big debate. They said no, we don't put tefillin on Shabbat. That's just the bottom line. But the idea is that in all these different opinions, the sages allowed, if you find a tefillin in the street, in the place that you're afraid that it can be a damage, that you should put the tefillin on yourself on Shabbat in the public domain, because of the honor of tefillin, etc. But if you look at what we're going to discuss today and tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem, it's also all these different opinions over wearing tefillin on Shabbat or not.
Well, let's say in the case of what you were just saying, that the guy that sold you this tefillin, he
Tried
only
to
had
sell.
one. Well,
He sold me one. Yeah.
well, got one. If you only have one and it's Shabbos, should you still put on that one?
How you
If
going
you're
to buy
afraid-
tefillin on Shabbos?
No, if you find it, or you got it, somebody lost it and you find it on Shabbos.
The whole case is you have a value of tefillin, that it's a huge mitzvah, and if you're afraid that this tefillin will be somehow damaged, then you have the obligation to do something, not to leave it there just the way it is, you know. If you're afraid, for example, like Tosfot said, like the dogs come and ruin it, so you have to take it. But the way they ask you to take it is like you're putting tefillin, like you're putting tefillin in a daily basis, the same manners. Rabban Gamliel Omer, later we explain in more detail. Rabban Gamliel Omer, Shnaim Shnaim. So I know some Rabbanim, God bless them. I used to have a neighbor, Rabbi Toledano, that they used to put 2 Yad and 2 Rosh together. Soon we explain it in details. In general, there is a different opinion between Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam in Tefillin. There are some people who put 2 pairs, like myself. But the key is that there are, according to this Mishnah, you can make a small bite, a small box, and you put the 2 boxes together and you wrap the tefillin together, 2 pairs. But anyway, so you should do it together. So if it's the 2 pairs, you should do it together. Later the Gemara explain. B'mei dvarim amurim, when the rabbi is allowed to do that, the Mishnah said bishanot, aval b'chadashot patur. So if it's a used tefillin, how do you know it's a used tefillin? For example, if you look at this part, at the way that we wrap them, right? So you see that it's not fresh, it's not new, right? Or you look at the tefillin themselves, you noticed, you see those corners, that it looks good, but it's not new. So the Mishnah said, all of that apply to all tefillin, meaning the one we already used. But if it's new, you shouldn't bother. Why? In those days, they used to make kmeot. I think the right word is amulet, right? So they used to take a kmeot, and they make it in the same manner as those parshiot, those parchments in tefillin, and people carry them for protections, etc. So the idea is, maybe since you see it as a brand new, maybe it's only kamea, maybe it's only amulet, and the amulet doesn't carry the same level of sanctity as the mitzvah of tefillin, because when we put in tefillin, we said the same as Sefer Torah. In that sense, we said L'shem Kedushat Tefillin. We put in tefillin and we make a statement. It's for the sanctity of fulfilling a biblical commandment. So Tosfot tells us that even he wished to, he cannot do that. He cannot put it in. Why? Because he said that you don't put tefillin in the public domain on Shabbat. All of that apply only to the old one, but the new one, they don't do it. Anyway, the whole idea of the Talmudic time, when they use those kameot, so they put the name of Shin and Dalet and Yud, the same name as you see outside of mezuzot, this name, and the difference was that when they wrapped the tefillin, you know that when we wrap the tefillin, for example, the hand tefillin, so for sure it's a difference between Hasidim, Sfaradim, etc. But you basically wrap it and you put the name of Hashem, the Shin and the Yud, etc. It's like you're putting the name of God, right? This is like Shin, etc. So the whole idea is that when we wrap the tefillin is a Shin and Dalet and Yud. The Shin and Dalet and Yud, you remember, we talked many times about it. This is the Shin here, and basically you have Shin on the hand, and this, there are different nuschaot. There are this who do dalet here, they should do double dalet here, and there is the yud in the hands tefillin, and is the shin on the way that we put in the hands, etc. So Tosfot Arosh said that the situation here is they found the tefillin like that. You see, it's like that. In other words, you don't find them that it's already wrapped and inside the box or inside the bag. You just find them open and in this manner. So he explained, so when you see something like that, you don't know, especially, most probably in those days they don't have the boxes, it's not clear. So you just found the tefillin like that, a pair, and now you need to figure out what's going on. So if you see the pair just like that, you don't know what's involved. Is that the amulet? Is that a real pair of tefillin? So therefore, the Tosfot Arosh said, you treat it accordingly. So they said, again, the amulet doesn't carry the same kedusha, the same sanctity. Metza'an tzvatin o krichot. If you go to the sofer, one of those sofrim that we go in near Israel, in Baltimore, so if you look, you see in their studio, in their lab, they have sometimes pair, without the boxes. They just wrap pair, and put it when they finish preparing it and ready for sale, etc. And sometimes they made a different tefillin, etc. You know, there's some Sfaradim, some Ashkenazim, some. So what happened is you see them in like pairs, independently, or they wrap together, meaning that he cannot put them together in that manner before the Shabbat is over. Machshich alehen umevi'an. So he needs basically to stand there. Imagine if it's a Shabbat afternoon, so he needs to stand there until the Shabbat is over, and then he needs to bring them in the house, in his house, meaning all together. Just turn the page 95. Ubesakana. So Rashi explained to us that he's afraid that maybe people are going to attack. In those days, that it was a fear. Rashi lived at the era of the early crusade. So it was a time that people afraid to practice Judaism. So, or it was a fear that those places, those countries, they forbade the Jews to do any practice of this mitzvot. You see that the feeling is not something you can hide. So, if you're afraid from a thief, so you're afraid from the prohibition against doing that. So what did he do? Mechasan ve'olech lo. So he can take his clothing or his talit in order to protect the tefillin, and he leave it, and he comes back right after Shabbat, and he bring it. The Meiri in Rabbi Yonatan said he bring it in the most secret way, like almost clandestinely, you know, so he's not get in trouble. Rabbi Shimon Omer, נותנן לחברו וחברו לחברו עד שמגיע לחצר הראשונה. So it's appear, the rabbis tells us that Rabbi Shimon also speaks in a situation that it's dangerous. So he said they're going in a process. Reuven, let's call him names. So the first guy that found it, his name is Reuven. Reuven, what did he do? We have issue that it's a public domain. Public domain will allow only to go 4 cubit. Right. So now Reuven give it to Shimon. Shimon give it to, let's say, Elliot. And Elliot give it to David. And David give it to Gil. And Gil give it to Benny. You know, etc., etc. So you go further for all of you guys. And therefore, he reach a point, they all reach a point that they reach the outside courtyard of the city. That's a safe place. and then they are saved. If you may ask, so how come we just talk about dangerous of carry tefillin, so now you're talking about transferring them in between 4 cubits? Later the Gemara explained that it was a different dangerous. It's not that one. Anyway, Gaon Yaakov adds that it's not physically that the last one enter between the public and the private domain, that's the courtyard, but he is putting his hand inside the courtyard, and the owner of the courtyard collected them. That's the Gaon Yaakov explained. Anyway, V'chen bno, in those days it was a possibility to leave a baby in the field, so he needs to take inside the house. So the Mishnah said, נותנו לחברו וחברו לחברו ואפילו ל100. So they transferred one to another, even to 100. So meaning that's not applied to the tefillin here, they're using it in the case of delivery of baby. רבי יהודה אומר, נותן אדם חבית לחברו וחברו לחברו אפילו חוץ לתחום. So that Rabbi Yehuda add to what Rabbi Shimon, that according to Rabbi Shimon it's a rabbinic prohibition to carry in and out between 2 domains, but they allow only in a rare circumstance. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's something that you allow even for things like it's an optional. It's not a like he found this barrel filled of liquid matter or food, that he can go and enter the private domain in that way. אמרו לו, לא תהלך, זו יותר מרגלי בעליה. The sages said to Rabbi Yehuda, wait a second. The idea of a person cannot go out of the Shabbat domain, so there is a limit how much he can go. Now you talk about the barrel filled of liquid, so that barrel cannot walk, quote unquote, in our language, because it transferred between the people more the Tchum Shabbat, more than Shabbat limit. So because it's always go by the owner, you owner of that barrel, or you owner of your body, and therefore there is a limit. So if the owner of that barrel prepare for himself a Iruvei Tchumin, okay, so this barrel needs to be within that domain. But if not, this barrel needs to be the same Shabbat limit that the owner have. Now, the Gemara go further to say, the first Tana in the Mishnah, the first one that they said, Zug echad ein tfeilo, which means you need to take 1 pair and no more than 1 pair. Leimat nan stama de lo Rabbi Meir. Usually the Gemara said in Sanhedrin, page 86, that if you see Mishnah and you don't see a name of the sage, of the rabbi that make the first statement in the Mishnah, so you go by the idea, the rabbi said that if there's no specific name, it's Rabbi Meir. But here they said Leimat nan stama de lo Rabbi Meir. So the Mishnah said here that it's not accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Meir, that usually when you have an attribute Mishnah you go by Rabbi Meir. דאי כרבי מאיר האמר לובש כל מה שיכול ללבוש ועוטף כל מה שיכול לעטוף. Rabbi Meir said in regards to God forbid a fire on Shabbat, you need to save whatever you can. Now you go in the domain, you see expensive clothing, so what do? You're not supposed to carry, so you can put on yourself. Remember we studied the amount of clothing, 1, 2, 3, one at the top of the other, as long as you can have it as part of your clothing. Detnan, we learn it in the Tractate Shabbat, page 120. Ulesham, which is the courtyard that attached to the place that it have a fire, motzi kol klei tashmisho, he should take all those vessels that he needs for that Shabbat, velovesh kol ma sheyachol lilbosh, ve'otef kol ma sheyachol la'atov. He should carry only the need for Shabbat. He should wear those clothing that he can put, and in order to save his clothing from that fire. So therefore, in our case, a person can wear more than one pair of tefillin each and every time he needs to bring them to a private domain. So it means, what we derive from that? That the way we understand the first Tana, the first opinion in a Mishnah, that hold that you can take one pair only each and every time, it's the opposite than what we said in that Tractate Shabbat. So therefore, even the sage is not allowed to save his clothing from a fire, only to take it to the to his yard. This is basically the whole concept is rabbinic, meaning here since it's called derech malbush, that's the way a person wearing his clothing is. So you can wear one, you can wear 10 on yourself. So we do not differentiate between many and few. That's the Ritva said. So the Gemara now said, "Ve'ahi stama mimai de Rabbi Meir hi." You're bringing a source from Tractate Shabbat, page 120, but how do you know that that's follow? That's the idea of Rabbi Meir. The Ktane Allah, we learn right there, lovesh, he can put a clothing whatever he can, umotzi, and he take it to the clothes courtyard, uposhet, and he take it off, and then he runs back and he wear another clothing. Velovesh umotzi ufoshet afilu kol hayam kol div Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir said you can do it all day long. I had a friend, he made aliyah. So the truck came from Ashdod, from the port, and those people put in his master bedroom clothing that my wife and I looked, we couldn't believe it. No exaggeration, maybe 300 shoes,
Oy.
maybe a couple of 100 shirts. So I couldn't understand it. I asked him, that fellow, I said, Mari, why, what is that? No, that's the way I like it. Fine. Years later, after he passed, his children told me that he was a survivor of the Shoah. And he came to America. He used to go to the mall. And you walk in the mall and you see a deal. 3 shirts for whatever, $25 or whatever in those days. So every time he saw these deals, he used to pick up those shirts. Get a good deal, you get it cheap, should take it. And he collected all of that because he lived in an era of poverty in those years in Russia or Germany, and during the Shoah, and he lost his family. So when he opened that closet and he see all this tremendous abundance of shirts and suits and ties, and he have hundreds and hundreds of ties and shoes, it gives him comfort. Now back to our subject. Imagine that fellow, may rest in peace, has a fire. Now he wants to save all his clothing. So here, according to Rabbi Meir, he can go all Shabbos and do that. Imagine, you go in, put all the things, the fire maybe is in the other side of the house, running out to the yard, take it off, running back, put it on, running out, take it off, etc. You can go back and forth the whole Shabbos, right?
Rabbi, this just don't make no sense. if you having a fire, why would you want to put on one running, come out, one running?
The clothing are expensive.
Why not pick up why you don't exempt when it's a fire? Because just pick up what you can pick up and throw it outside.
You take one time, but let's say in a case that you have a very expensive clothing that you care for them and you want it.
No, what he's asking is why don't you just exempt it so you can just pick up all the clothes you want and just carry it out of the house when there's a fire?
Because it's an issue of
well, I understand. He's saying why don't you exempt them for against the Shabbat
basically,
Malacha?
If you need something for that particular day for Shabbat, by basic halacha, that's what you're supposed to take. In other words, if you need a certain food,
I think he understands halakha. What he's saying is, why don't they waive the halakha in the case of a fire to allow you to take it out?
Yeah, because
I guess my understanding is, I mean, you only do that in the case of life. Life threatening is the only time you can, to save a life.
I think,
but if it's a loss, it's
they say even what about? But I mean, even the halakha, can you put out a fire on Shabbat?
I think
in your house, are you allowed to put out a fire?
I think what
so you gotta leave it, make it burn.
What Gilbert asked is just the upcoming discussion. I think let's just wait a second. Let's see what they have here. Amarava afilutei Rabbi Meir hatam derech malbusho kechol shaviu הרבנן והכה derech malbusho kechol shaviu הרבנן. He said, even you tell me that this Mishnah follow Rabbi Meir in regard to save his clothing from the fire on Shabbat. The sages said it should be the way that he does during the week. But here, in regard to putting the tefillin on Shabbat, that they said that you have to do it in the same manner as you're putting tefillin on Shabbat. So, in other words, you should not make a difference than you do it during the week. Now, the Gemara elaborate, and they said, Hatam, in regard to save his clothing, divechol kama devai lavish, that during the for example, winter time. So people wear many clothing, right? L'inyan hatzala nami shao lerabanan. In regard to a save, can wear as many as he likes to. Hachad debechol nam zug echad ein tfeilo. But during the week he put only one pair of tefillin, not more than that. L'inyan hatzala nam zug echad tfeilo. In other words, they go by the idea that the Rashi tells us that the person does doing the weekly mundane way. So therefore you should do only one pair, and the second one is not considering part of his clothing, but we call it masoi. It's like carry something, and that's something that they do not allow. Next part of the Mishnah, Rabban Gamliel Omer, Shnayim. He said that you put two pairs in your arm, two pairs in your head. Maika Savar. Why he hold that you put two pairs of tefillin and not more? Ika Savar Shabbat Zman Tefillin Hu. Zug Echad Ein Tfei Lo. If you tell me that you should Shabbat is the time that you also put a tefillin, so it's only one pair. The second one is no longer clothing. The Tosfot explained it differently. He said, if you tell me that Shabbat is a proper time to put tefillin, if you put more than one pair, so it's a violation of what the Torah said. You should not add more. Bal tosif. So you should not do it even for the sake of saving them. So he said, V'ika savar Shabbat lav zman tefillinu. But if you hold that Shabbat is not time for putting tefillin, so mishum atzala derech malbush sha'u lerabanan, and because the rescue is permitted in a manner that one typically wear clothing that the Shabbat permitted him, so they said afilu tfei nami, so you can do even more than two pairs each and every time. So the Chazon Ish said in Orach Chaim chapter 4, so you can go ahead and set even many pairs as long as you can. That's the because it's if a person wearing let's say different rings and different materials around his bodies. So what's the difference by the amount? You can wear as many as you like if you want to save them and you care for that. So they said, Le'olam kasavar Shabbat loves tminino. You have to say that he hold that Shabbat is not a time to put tefillin. And v'chisharu Rabbanan li'inyan hatzala derech malbush bimkom tefillin. That the sages allow in order to rescue it, it has to be in the way that you typically wear clothing, which means the appropriate place for the tefillin. And therefore, the same way as you do it during the week. So in other words, you don't put it in other places of your body, in just the places that you do it during the week. Tosfot said in the Bua Matchil Vechi that he disagreed with Rashi, and he said that that's specifically in the place that that you see it clearly, the people put it during the week, but because otherwise it's considering a carrying. It is like masui. It's not the way that that you wear it. But even according to Tosfot, if someone did it, he doesn't need to have the process of sin offering, like violation of Torah law, because it's considering kela'achar yad. It's like in a side point. It's like what we said in Gemara in Shabbat 62, that you do it indirectly manners. So now the Gemara asks, if that's the case, that only in the place you put tefillin, zug echad name ein tefelo, that you have to do it each and every time, only one pair. Why Rabban Gamliel allowed to have two pairs each and every time? Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, makom yesh barosh le'aniach bo shtei tefillin. So that's an important point. He says there's a room in one's head to place two tefillin. One can place two tefillin in his head and don them both in the proper manner. It's like usually you have to take two fingers from the beginning of the hair. Otherwise, if you notice, you guys always should watch around. But people should not put it here or here. There has to be two fingers. But he hold, especially if you have those small size tefillin, that it's enough spot in the person's head to put two. So therefore he can put it together, and he entered the main in Shabbat. Tosfot said here in Dibur Matchil Makom, he said that you derive from that there is a measurement of the tefillin, which means this is the regular side. But if you look, you see sometimes people have a small side. So, and they hold here that is two etzbaot, there's two fingers. It's very much, if you see pictures, remember I did it in my book on Rashi, the way that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, wear the tzitz. That's the special spot,
the headpiece, yeah.
Right? So they put the feeling. That's what Tosfot here have a discussion. Anyway, hanicha derosh. This explains clearly when it's come to the head tefillin. So why Rabban Gamliel allowed to go and put two each and every time? You make it in a small way, small, and you can put it on the head, and it's a proper spot to put a tefillin. The yad ma'ika lemeima. So how he hold the hand tefillin? Because it's not the entire zeroah. When you put the tefillin, so always remember, you're putting the tefillin, it's against your heart. And in that spot is a small domain that you can put it. It's not the entire hand that you can put the tefillin. So, so how he can allow to do more than one? So the Gemara said, Kid Ravuna. Amar Ravuna, פעמים שאדם בא מן השדה וחבילתו על ראשו. So sometimes a person come from the field with his bundle on his head. You go to some sections, like you see it in the old city of Jerusalem, you see it in other places, in Arab countries, you see people carry on their heads, right? Things. So in those days they take the bundle and he put it on his head, and in order not to crush the tefillin, what did he do? In order not to belittle them, הוא מסלקן מראשו וקושרן בזרועו. So remove them from his head and bind them on his arm. So it's a room for additional tefillin on his arm. So the Gemara rejected that and said, Eimad Amar Ravuna. Ravuna tells us that it's only by the circumstance that he doesn't have other option. Why? שלא ינהג בהם דרך ביזיון ראוי מי אמר. So that's apply only when you fear that he treat them with degrading manner by placing a bundle on the top of them. But in a regular, did you say that the spot on his arm fit the two tefillin? It's an issue. So he said, you can't say that the second one is like a nice garments on his head. So he said, אלא כי דאמר רב שמואל ברב יצחק, מקום יש בראש שראוי להניח בו שתי תפילין, הכנה ממקום יש ביד שראוי להניח בו שתי תפילין. This is the same way as you tell that there is a place in a person's head to put two pairs of tefillin, right? The same manner, it's in his arm, that he can room in the arm to place two tefillin, and therefore, if he put it other place, it's considering as a burden, as a masoi. Tana devei Menashe, in regard to tefillin, al yadcha zo kiboret. When the Torah said in Dvarim, in Deuteronomy chapter 6, that you have to take the tefillin, the hand tefillin, and put it on your hands, or it means on your arm, and it's applied to the what is called
bicep
muscle of the arm. So Rashi said that that's the specific location. Tosfot explained that that's the part of the hand between the shoulder and the elbow. Ben einecha, between your eyes. Zo kod kod. Kod kod, unlike the tzdokim, it's applied to between your eyes, in the crown of the head, this place. So they said heicha amri dever Rabbi Yanai, and that's very important practical halacha. Dever Rabbi Yanai said makom shel mocho shel tinok rofes. That's a place that the spot where the baby's 1-year-old baby head is soft under birth, which means that the Gemara in Menachot 37 said that during the first year of a baby life is a spot in his head that it's soft. That's the place to put the tefillin. The idea is, some say that it's applied to this spot, but the key point is the hand tefillin in this, it's a specific location that you put, according to Rashi, that's the spot you put, only the place that is soft in the baby. The Rambam in Hilchot Tefillin chapter 4 in the Meiri say basically the same as Rashi, but the Rosh in Hilchot Tefillin chapter 19 said that you can put the head as long as it's the beginning of the hair spot, you can put in that location, between that location and the other. But we follow the Rosh in that sense. That's the spot. Take 2 fingers and that's basically the spot. Leima vid Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak HaMiflegei. May you say that the first Tana and Rabban Gamliel disagree with the word of Rav and Shmuel Bar Yitzchak that there is a spot in the head and in the arm that you put the tefillin. The Tanakama leit le Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, the Rabban Gamliel eat le Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak. So the first one hold that is a place in the head, in his arm to put the pair of tefillin. Rabban Gamliel hold the same as Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, that it's a place in the head, in the arm for two pair of tefillin. So you can do it together. So the Gemara said, "Lo." Now everyone is in the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yitzchak. לכולי עלמא יתלו דרב שמואל בר יצחק ואחא בשבת זמן תפילין כמפלגת. תנא סבר שבת זמן תפילין הוא, ורב גמליאל סבר שבת זמן תפילין הוא. So this the idea is if they hold that Shabbat is the time to put in tefillin or not. So the first Tana hold that it's proper to do it on Shabbat, and therefore you allowed to carry them in the public domain. It's because that's the mitzvah of putting tefillin on Shabbat. Rabban Gamliel said that it's not the proper time, so therefore it's considering as a tachshit. It's something you wear for beauty, etc. So therefore you hold that you can go ahead and do even two in one time. And Rashi said that even what we discussed earlier, the idea of bal tosif, you should not add more, it's not applicable here. Another option to understand this disputation, the Kula Alma Shabbat Zman Tefillinu, that both Tanakama and Rabban Gamliel hold that Shabbat is a proper time to put the tefillin, and therefore even he doesn't put them in a manner of a mitzvah, it's still proper. But they disagree with regard whether the not fulfillment of mitzvah requires intent, which is Tanakama savar latzet lo bai kavana, Rabban Gamliel savar latzet bai kavana. So either the first one said that you need to have the manner of intent that you fulfill a mitzvah of the Torah. So since Shabbat is not the time to put tefillin, he held also that you don't need that proper manner of intent. So if he put two pair of tefillin, even in the sake of saving them, is for the mitzvah. So some say that it's bal tosif, that it's like in addition carrying, but therefore the Tanakama hold that you should not take more than one pair. But Rabban Gamliel said that mitzvot need to have the intent. So if he put two pairs of tefillin, his intent is to save them. So he's not putting tefillin for the sake of putting tefillin, and he's not violating of the law of bal tosif, you should not add more, and it's not considering as an extra burden, and it's just like a tachshit, like something that you make for the beautification. So the Rabban Gamliel hold that a person can take two pair in one time. Page 96, v'baitema. If you wish, you can say the kula alma latzet lo bai kavana. Everyone said that you don't need to have the intent in order to fulfill the mitzvah. The big question is if it's addition. The Torah said in Dvarim, in Deuteronomy chapter 13, that we're not allowed to add or reduce from the mitzvah. We need to have the mitzvah exactly the way they ask us. So for example, there are four corners of a tzitzit, we can't have 5 or 3, etc. So here you have the obligation to have just a pair, nothing more. The Tanakama sabar la'avor mishum bal tosif lo bai kavana. You don't need to have the intent in order to have this bal tosif, you should not add. Rabban Gamliel savar la'avor mishum bal tosif bai kavana. In other words, he needs to have the intent to do it. V'bai teima. Another option, idis viralan le Shabbat zman tefillinu. Lekule alma lo la'avor bai kavana v'lo latzet bai kavana. If you hold that Shabbat is a proper time to put tefillin, So regardless if it's Tanakama or Rabban Gamliel, they said that you don't need to have the intent. Why? Neither way, neither la'avor, neither to see that everyone will agree that one does not need to intend to violate the prohibition against adding a mitzvah, nor one need to intend to fulfill the mitzvah. So the one intention has no bearing on his action. והכה בלעבור שלא בזמנו כמפלגי. On the contrary, here they disagree with regard to the condition for violating the prohibition against adding a mitzvah. תנא סבר לא באי כוונה, אבל גם סבר שלעבור שלא בזמנו באי כוונה. One say, the first one, that you do not need to have the intent, the proper intent, and Rabban Gamliel said that they violate the prohibition against adding to a mitzvah not in its proper time. One needs intent to fulfill the mitzvah. So if he doesn't intend, it's not violate the prohibition. It's so it's not the issue of the second case of the tefillin. Yachei Rabbi Meir zug echad namelo. That's the case of even according to Rabbi Meir, one pair of the tefillin you should not put on Shabbat because it's addition the days that the Torah asks us to do. V'od hayashen bashmini, we said that the Shmini Atzeret, the last day of Sukkot, separate holiday. So we said in Shmini Atzeret, so it's like a separate Chag. So we don't have the obligation, as the Torah said in Vayikra in Leviticus chapter 23 and 34, that the obligation is only doing Sukkot but not applied to Shmini Atzeret. So if someone go ahead and sleep in a sukkah, Basukah Yilkeh, that he adds more to what the Torah asks us to do. The Torah asks us to be at the sukkah, sleep at the sukkah only the 7 days of Sukkot. And the din is not so. There's even those who hold that by the rabbinic law that in the diaspora you need to be in a sukkah even in Shmini Atzeret, because they add one day that's feika de yomai. It's not sure if it's a obligatory or not. So if a person live in Israel, so the chinuch said in mitzvah taf nun dalet that it's an issue, because if you have the intent to fulfill the mitzvah of being in sukkah, he add more than the Torah asked him to do. So they said ela machvarta kedei shaninan miikara. So it's clear that we originally, the way we originally answer, that you must accept one of the other explanation. So therefore, either you go by the Rashba, who says that you add it for the sake of beauty, like you do it in the martels and aravot, in the 4 species, and it's not an addition, or you go by the Ritva, that they have it by the tradition, but in a tefillin, the mitzvah is only one pair. So if you add one, it's like it's an issue of why he does that. So again, you can read a lot about it in Rashba and Ritva, and the Rambam Ilchot Lulav chapter 7, and the Ravid, and more involved with this discussion. Let's go to a practical halachot. Rambam, Sefer Zmanim Ilchot Shabbat, chapter 19. Hamotze tefillin. If one finds the tefillin on Shabbat that were discarded or left unguarded, he dons them one pair at a time in a typical manner and bring them into the town. The Shulchan Aruch Orachaim 301 said, if it is dangerous to do so due to a government decree against donning a tefillin, he covers them and only then proceeds on his way. Now, the Shulchan Aruch add in Orachaim 301, he said, if one finds pair of tefillin outside the city on Shabbat, and there are too many to bring them in one pair at a time before dark, he must remain with them until the conclusion of Shabbat. But if he's concerned about bandits, he may move them less than 4 cubits at a time. Alternatively, he may pass them to another person, and so forth. The Rambam in the Hilchot Shabbat, chapter 19, dealing here with a barrel of carrying a barrel, having a liquid. So one may pass a barrel to another person, who passes to another person, etc., in the public domain, provided that no single person carry it in the 4 cubits. So it's passed beyond the Shabbat boundaries. That's the key point. But the Rambam hold that it's he needs to declare ownerless in order to do that. But you see Rabbeinu Zrachi Alevi and the Magid Mishneh and others that say that it's an issue. It's prohibited carrying in this manner. Again, so even in the case of tefillin, the Ramah is one of those that have the issue of this leniency, and you see a long discussion in Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 3:49. The last halacha that I would like to discuss with you, it's the Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 27, the place that you put the hand tefillin and the head tefillin. So the tefillin of the arm is placed on the lower slope of the bicep, the muscle between the elbow and the armpit, while the entire bicep is suitable for tefillin. The custom is to place it closer to the elbow rather than the armpit, so that the opposite of the heart, that's the Rambam, Hilchot Tefillin chapter 4, and also Shulchan Aruch Harav Balatanya. Now, it's important that the tefillin shel rosh, the head tefillin, placed in the crown of the head between the eyes, but not between the eyes and anywhere from the beginning of the hairline back to the place where the infant's head is soft. So it's an area that's large enough to hold 2 sets of tefillin, and again, that's the Rambam, Hilchot Tefillin, and Mezuzah and Sefer Torah chapter 4, and Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 27.